I want to reverse engineer this so that I can make a stepper motor mount, and thought that a 3D scanner would be a great way to do that. Is it? This is a project I've been working on for some time, and the next thing that I have to do is to create a stepper motor mount for this to be able to drive this axis. I could just measure everything, but I wanted to try out 3D scanners to see if they would be a solution to this. From what I've seen, they're supposed to be really accurate, and it seems like the idea of reverse engineering something like this from a 3D scan had a lot of potential. So when RevoPoint came out with their POP 2, I reached out to them to see if I could get a review copy of their scanner. It was too late for me to get in on that, but they recently sent me one of these, which is the Mini. So I thought, no problem. I'll just scan this and everything's good. What I learned is that scanning is an art form. There's actually quite a bit of a learning curve to get to the point where you can do a good job of scanning something like this and get good quality results. I also learned, as you'll see here, that I needed to put some marker dots on there. That's not the full story. Let me go back in time and walk you through the process that I went through. And from that, you'll get an idea that there is quite an investment you have to put into learning how to use a 3D scanner before you can get the full value out of the scanner. So one of the first things that I did is to take the knob off that was easy to take off to make it easier to scan the parts that are remaining. I don't really need to scan this knob to be able to reverse engineer the mount for this. But as you can see here, I do have a number of dots. The idea of these dots is that the scanner can see these and it can use them for alignment of one frame to the next. The reason that's important is because this is something that it's a geometric object. In other words, it has a lot of flat surfaces, not that many curves. And because it doesn't have a lot of curves like you would have with a figurine, this is difficult to scan and keep track of where one scan is versus the other. So you have to have markers. But as you'll see in a moment, having markers is not enough of a story. This is the setup I have, and I'm just holding the camera with the tripod. This has legs that pop out, but I'm just using it in handheld mode. And right here is what the scanner is seeing, and it doesn't have quite enough light. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new scan. So I'll go ahead and say new scan, and then I want to have high accuracy. And I've learned, well, let me start with feature mode and show you what happens with feature mode. So the first thing I want to do is set the lighting. If you look down here, I'm not sure why it moves from there to there, you can see it's pretty dark. And so what I need to do is I need to increase this until I get better fill in there. You can see I'm not getting, I am getting fill. But I can make it a little bit lighter and it should give me better results. And there are some areas where I can still see blue. The blue one here indicates that it doesn't have enough exposure. The red is overexposed. So I'm just cranking it up. I'm okay having the dots themselves overexposed. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and start the scan. I have the distance about 10 to 15 centimeters, which gives me excellent on here. And so now if I press the space bar, it'll start the scan after a countdown. So now I can try to move it slowly. And the thing you'll notice is that it's not in alignment. So the surface I'm getting is just going all over the place. And that's what happens every time I try to use the feature mode. The feature mode works well when you've got some nice organic features like you would in a figurine, but here it's just geometric. So I'll start over, and I'm trying to do the mouse with my left hand, which is taking a little bit longer. And what I've found is sometimes I have to click stop and then restart, which is what I want to do. And then I'll do a new scan again. And this time I'm going to change it to marker mode. Marker mode should pick up these white dots. And for marker mode to work, I have to have enough markers in the view. So I'll go ahead and say start on that. And then I have to set the brightness again. It doesn't remember it from last time. So I think that was about right. A little bit brighter. Maybe a little brighter. Okay, so that looks like pretty good for scanning. So the other thing I'm going to do is there's a timer here, right there. And it's currently saying 3 seconds countdown. I'm going to set that to 0. So that means when I press space, it'll start scanning immediately. So I'll go ahead and start scanning. Okay, and then I want to move slowly across the object so that it keeps enough markers in position. And you can see even with the markers, it's still having a hard time sometimes keeping in alignment. You'll notice that it turns red for the main thing when it loses alignment. But this is doing a decent job with what it's able to scan. And so now I'll go ahead and say stop. And then this is what lots of other people have shown, which is you click the stop button, and then you have to say turn off fuse the point cloud immediately. You want to do that so that you can change the accuracy here, or I should say the points. So it's currently 0.18. I want to make this as fine as I can. So I'm going to move it all the way 0.2, 0.02, and then I'll fuse this into a point cloud. This takes a little while. I did 186 scans. The more scans you do, in other words, the longer time you spend moving across the object, the longer this process will take. I've loaded the file into Vivo Studio on my desktop computer. What that means is the only thing that I did on my laptop is I recorded the point cloud, and then for all of the other operations, I'm using Vivo Studio. And you can see that there's a lot of detail that's missing. Things that were black or silver were harder to scan. So it pretty much just scanned the areas that were painted within the view of the scanner itself. Now if I zoom in, you can see the detail doesn't look that bad. What we really need to do though is turn this into a mesh to see what that looks like. So I'm going to turn it into a mesh with the quality at excellent and see what that looks like. This takes a little while, so I'll bring it back after it finishes. You can already see quite a bit of difference in the quality of the results. And it's certainly not bad. And this has a lot of hope for being able to use it in 3D software. One thing you will see is there is quite a bit of noise. Now, one of the things I have to experiment with is seeing whether or not this noise is because of the surface or because of the lighting. One of the things that I've read is that you generally want to scan things in the dark. For filming purposes, I did have one light. It was an LED light, but my understanding is that LED lights and this scanner don't get along very well. One of the challenges of scanning this are the things like these black surfaces, the black screws, etc. The scanner that I have, the Mini, uses a blue LED light, and the thing about using a blue LED light is that not all surfaces are going to reflect that light very well. This surface reflects it reasonably well, but it's a little bit too shiny to give the quality that I'd like to have. And then black just absorbs the blue light. Things that are red are going to not reflect the blue light very well, etc. So what I learned is that you have to spray something like this with a material, a spray that has a powder that will take away a lot of the color, or at least make it so that the thin layer of powder that it puts on here will be what reflects the light rather than the part itself. So I've ordered some of that spray, and the type that I ordered is a type that's supposed to sublimate. In other words, it's like evaporation, but all of the material just disappears into the air. And so there's no cleanup required, but it's going to take about a week for me to get that. The scanner came with this bust, you can see here. And so the first thing I want to do is set the brightness correctly. The blue here means it's underexposed, so I'll increase the brightness a little bit. That actually looks pretty good because I'm getting no blue anymore on the body and a little bit of red. So I'll go ahead and start a new scan with high accuracy, and I'll say features. What I want to do is scan for about 360 degrees, so I started with the back right ear. If you look carefully, you may have noticed that the exposure control went from where I had set it back to 0. And that's something that I learned about later and realized later. Basically, whenever I enter the scan mode, I have to set that up again. And the green, once I click start, is the current area being scanned, and then the blue is the parts that have been scanned already. So as this comes around, you'll see that the green will catch up to the blue area. And the recommendation is to not go more than 360 degrees, so once this fills in here, I'll go ahead and stop that. And then I want to turn this off, complete it, and what that allows me to do is to set this to the minimum of 0.02, and then I'll go ahead and fuse the point cloud. This takes a little while, so I'll come back when it's finished. So now that it's finished, what I'll do is I'll put this on its face in the center, and then make sure that I've got the camera aligned so I can see the whole thing while it's rotating. And I want to give it a full rotation so I can see where the center of rotation is and make sure I've got that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm not seeing any areas here that are blue, but I think, well, there was one. So I'll increase it. Well, I'll put it right there and see how it does. So I'm going to go ahead and press start again, and it should start to track, which it did right there. And then what you'll see is it's going to fill in these areas here that it wasn't able to get to before, including the bottom. It's going to get some of under the chin, but I'm guessing it's not going to get all of the area under the chin. So we'll let that finish a full rotation, and then I'll put the statue on its back. So I'll pause that, and I think I'm going to try a different approach here. So rather than fuse the point cloud, I'll just go ahead and move it to this position, and then start again. And you can see it fairly quickly picked that up, and now it will fill in these areas under the chin. Okay, that didn't do what I expected. You can see that it's having to pick up some of these areas again. So what that tells me is I should have completed the point cloud before changing the orientation. So I'll go ahead and say stop, and then I'll make sure that it's still on 0.02, which it is, so I'll fuse this, and then I'll come back when that's done. That took several minutes, but you can see it finished the fusing, and it actually did pick up both the top and bottom. So what I'm going to do now is export this, and I'm exporting it so that I can do all the other operations in Revo Studio, because I found that Revo Studio allows me to go back and forth and try things again. So I'm going to go ahead and import that and be right back. It takes a while to import it. Once it imports it, it's pretty much what we saw before. And this is where we can start to mesh. So I'll go ahead and mesh, and I'll do it at excellent and see what results we get. And again, this is going to take a little while. Okay, it finally finished fusing, or I should say turn it into a mesh. And you can see the results are quite good. There are some areas that I missed behind the ear, but the detail in general looks really good. So this seems to indicate that this scanner should be able to handle some pretty detailed parts. So let me switch to a different part. Next, I decided to try working with this boxcar. This is a model train. It's about a little bit more than 3 inches long. As you can see here, it's almost 4 inches long. So I'll say new scan. And again, the first thing is I need to adjust the brightness. And I'm looking both here as well as here. So looking in this area here, it seems like it's okay because there's not a lot of blue, but you can tell here that it's not picking up the side. So I want to keep increasing the brightness until I'm picking up the side better. And that's interesting because now that I have more brightness, I'm seeing more blue in the preview here, which is kind of odd. So you can see that this is a pretty difficult object to scan, but I'll go ahead and try it anyway. And probably one of the reasons it's difficult to scan is because of the paint that's on here. I've got green on the sides. Blue probably would have been better. Green absorbs, some of the blue. And then this is a silver finish on the top. Anyway, let me go ahead and scan that. Whoops, let me stop that. I forgot to turn the turntable on, so I'm going to restart this, which means I have to go and do the scan again. Set everything up again. I'll turn the turntable on, and now I'll go ahead and try it. And you can see it's not picking everything up. It was missing some of the corners and some of the other details. It is showing excellent up here. So based on that, we should get really good results. But again, it's missing a lot of the details there. You can see a lot of blue in there. So, the results are okay. I'll go ahead and stop this and then do the meshing or the fusing, and then I'll come back. It finished the fusing in the point cloud, and as I mentioned, there's a lot of detail that's still missing, but let me go ahead and export this and then import it into Revo Studio, turn it into mesh, and then I'll come back and show you the results. It turned out okay. It's missing some details, as you can see here. It is picking up, I think, the fact that this lettering is raised from the side because it's pad printed on with extra ink. But then there's noise on the there's noise on the surface, and it's not great. I was getting pretty frustrated at this point, but then I did some more reading, watched some more videos, and I realized that a lot of the problem that I have here is because of the blue light not reflecting equally from different surfaces. And so what I really needed is to get some type of spray that would take the sheen off this and make everything more uniform. Now, reading, there are some sprays like AE Sub that I've ordered, but it's going to take a while to arrive. So in the meantime, what I did is decide to take apart and spray it with some spray foot powder. So let's take a look at that. I took a slightly smaller boxcar and then sprayed it with the spray-on foot powder. And you can see the texture from the foot powder. It's a little bit heavier and coarser than I would like, but until I get the AE Sub spray, it's the best I can do. I was getting pretty frustrated. I just wasn't getting the results that I wanted, and originally I was thinking, okay, well, this is not a very good scanner. It's easy to blame the scanner, but I figured, okay, I need to be fair. So I posted a set of questions up on the RevoPoint forum and provided information about what the scan looked like, as well as what my setup looked like. I did get a lot of useful information from Pop Up the Volume, and I'm going to skip over everything that I learned from him, but you can see that I got better results with the next time. This is actually with a single scan, rather than from multiple heights, so it doesn't have the alignment and the overlap issues. It provided some more information. We went back and forth a few times. I got some worse results, but then realized that they actually weren't as bad as I thought. And by the way, at this point, I had moved this from the orientation you see here to standing up on its end. One of the things that he pointed out is with an object this long, I'm not going to get as sharp details when things are moving closer and farther away from the camera. So let me show you the setup that I switched to. So at his suggestion, I switched to having it in this position. And you can't really see it in the RGB camera. Here, I'll show it there. And the reason you can't see it in the RGB camera is because I decided to turn off the lights. All of the lights that I have are LED lights. And so I wanted to just use the scanner, the blue light from the scanner. So this is using only the blue light from the scanner. And even with that, it's not picking up the insides. So I've been doing experiments, and what I'll do is just scan this as it is. And you see it jumps every now and then. I think that's because it's kind of struggling with the orientation. Okay, so that was a full orientation. Now what I'm going to do is lower the camera a little bit. And so the idea is to be able to scan more of the object by doing that. So I'll press start. And you can see it was red initially because it didn't have alignment, but now it picked up alignment. So it should be able to continue scanning and be able to pick up more of the object. This is the approach that I used before. And one of the things that I've learned is, although this works, the better way to do it is to do separate scans with the camera in different positions and then use Revo Studio to combine them and set the orientation. I'm certainly not an expert at using Revo Studio, so that is something that I'm going to have to learn and become an expert at later. Okay, now I'm going to move to the very bottom. I'm going to increase the brightness a little bit to see if I can get some of the inside. You can see the alignment here is quite poor, and it's not able to find the alignment. So what I do in that case is I have to go in here and then undo, and basically try to undo the parts that were not in alignment, and then try to see if it'll pick up alignment again. And it's lost track. It's not able to find alignment. Here it thinks it's found alignment, but it really hasn't. So one of the points for showing you this is that if you're going to scan a model like this and you want to get all of the detail, there's more learning you have to do than even I have done so far. So one of the things that I didn't understand correctly as in terms of one of the suggestions is that the scanner should be parallel to these surfaces. And so I took that to mean that I should have the scanner in the horizontal position rather than angled down by 30 or 45 degrees. It turns out that's not what he meant. But when I did that, when I had the scanner in the horizontal position and scanned it, you can see that the results actually turned out really well. So what I want to do is some more experimentation with this, where I do multiple scans and then load them into Revo Studio and see if I can blend them together in Revo Studio and get a really good result that looks like this for the entire model, and then also get a scan for the end, or both ends I should say. But before I do that, I want to clean off the foot powder and try the AE sub spray that I've now received. I got the spray, and it takes a fairly short burst of the spray to be able to coat it, and as you can see, you have to let it dry for a few seconds before you can tell how well it's covered, because when you first put it on, it has a wet look, which actually makes it look more like the color that's underneath, and then as it dries after a few seconds, then it turns white. I didn't find that much difference between using the AE sub spray and the powdered foot spray. I'm still having times where it works really well and other times where it doesn't work. So what I can tell from this is that there's still more that I need to learn before I can do a complete scan of this boxcar and have results that I like. Next up, I wanted to see how well this spray worked on the lathe carriage. So here you can see me spraying it from different angles. And the one thing that's probably becoming clear is that it's not doing a very good job of coating the black. There are two different sections that are black, or actually three. The screws, the part at the top, and then the knob or the handle that's in the lower left. And it's just not covering them that well. So the next thing that I'm going to do is try it with the scanner and see how it works. And the result was frustrating. If you look, you can see that the part that it's currently scanning keeps turning into red. It goes back to green sometimes and back and forth, but it's losing the alignment. Now I'm using marker mode now instead of feature mode because I have a bunch of marker dots on there. But even with the marker dots, and I can see in the camera that it's picking up the marker dots, and I can see in the preview that it's picking up the marker dots, it's still, for some reason, not maintaining alignment. Now, given the results that I've gotten from other things and the results I previously got from this, I'm pretty sure this is just operator error. In other words, I'm pretty sure I just haven't got to the point yet where I have the expertise with 3D scanning to be able to do this reliably. And I'm not sure at this point where to go to learn how to do that other than trial and error. I've seen other people who've done absolutely amazing things with their RevoPoint Mini, so I know you can do amazing things. It's clear to me that I don't have the skills yet. This is the spray that I used, which is a vanishing scanning spray. As I mentioned before, this spray, including the powder, sublimates into the atmosphere. And it's kind of like evaporation, but it includes the powder. And it's just dissipating into the atmosphere. So afterwards, there's no cleanup of the part. Now, this video has been probably one of the most difficult videos that I've made, one of the most time-consuming videos I've made. One of the reasons for that is because the parts that I chose to try to scan were not easy parts to scan. You know, this is a fairly small geometric part with areas that are really hard to spray and to get the right contrast with the blue laser. And then the box cars that I chose to use have a lot of really fine details. They're also more geometric rather than organic. And what I've seen with all of the really fantastic examples of the RevoPoint Mini have, as far as I can remember, they've almost all been organic shapes, basically figurines. I think I made it a lot more difficult for myself by choosing these as subjects, but I chose them because these are the types of things that I'm interested in scanning. Now, as a result of this, I haven't really kept track of my time, but I'd probably say that I've spent on the order of 20 hours just doing research and trial and error and filming and editing for this episode. It may be more, but I don't think it's less. Now, one thing is I had promised when I asked for the review unit that I would get a video out within the time frame that they gave me. Unfortunately, because of the timing, I only had a little bit more than a week, about 10 days between when I received the unit and when I'm finishing up this video. So this was a little bit stressful for me. Also a little bit stressful because I like episodes that end with an upbeat conclusion, but that didn't happen here because the conclusion here is that there's a lot more that I need to learn about 3D scanning, a lot more practice that I need to put into it before I can be successful with scanning the things that I was trying to scan. This is still up on Kickstarter at the time that I've posted it. I think there will be about a week left on the Kickstarter. I'll put a link down below. I hope you enjoyed this non-traditional for me episode. Please help me grow the channel by subscribing, giving me a thumbs up, commenting below, and if you're already a subscriber, by clicking on the bell icon next to the subscribe button. you can be notified when my next video is available. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.